Hey there, guys. West of here, and I get the distinct privilege this afternoon to spend some time with my friends Brian and Joe, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about collaboration. And it's kind of cool because I met Brian, I guess probably 4 or 5 years ago, in the time that Cindy and I were serving on the John Maxwell team, or I guess now Maxwell Leadership's President's Advisory Council, specific to the Live to Lead event, helping hosts. And both Brian and Joe have hosted Live to Lead in their own areas over the years, as Cindy and I have in the Harrisonburg area where we live. But today we're going to chat about how we've been able to collaborate with one another on some different things. We'll talk about that more as we go, but we're also going to chat about just the importance of being able to collaborate with other people, because one of us is never as good as all of us, but it's really, really critical that we build that in a way that it's really collaboration and not competition. So Brian, Joe, do you want to say hello, introduce yourself, and we'll get into some fun stuff.
Well, hello, Wes, and it has been our privilege to know you, be a mentor to us as we have hosted Live to Lead in our local area, and come alongside us now with this book effort. So I just appreciate you, and thanks for having us today for this live conversation about collaboration. We're an example of that.
Hey, Wes, Brian, good to see you both, and great to be here on a Thursday afternoon, a little bit out of our normal routine of when we show up for a monthly call with the authors. But this is just a great opportunity to talk into something very specific, and I look forward to our conversation, learn something from both of you.
Well, so Brian referenced something about the collaborative book. So I'm going to pull that on screen right quick, just so folks can understand. Well, what in the world is he talking about? Whoops, sorry guys. Bear with me as I learn to hit the right buttons. Yeah, trust me, I'm a professional. I know what we're doing here, but it works. So about what, Brian, a year and a half ago or so, you started working through putting together Voices for Leadership, a collaborative book that's really speaking to different topics in the leadership realm. And Joe and I both got to contribute a chapter to that. You had some great featured authors, and we were just blessed to be part of the what did you call it, the founding authors. And this is a page, and I'll pull that page down a little bit so we're still on the screen, but I am going to put up, so anybody watching this video, be it live or later on, can get a glimpse of where to find out more information. So the voicesforleadership.com is where you can learn more about that. And Brian, you're right now working on volume 2 and interviewing authors, taking submittals or applications for authors on that. So you want to chat about that whole project and how that's really kind of springboarded the idea of collaboration that we're talking about.
Yeah, Wes, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this thing I love now. It's my baby, if you will. But we started on our podcast. We got a guy by the name of Larry Levine. In fact, we interviewed him this week on our Authors Beyond the Book call. And Larry, I always ask my guest, hey, what can I do to improve my podcast? Larry said, Brian, I enjoyed it. It had a very good flow to it. You're very inquisitive. But if I had one recommendation, you should ask a signature question. He said, on our sales podcast, we ask a sales question. You should ask a leadership question. So I began to ask this very profound question: what does leadership and being a leader mean to you? I say profound in jest because it's such a simple question, and yet it has so many varying answers. I say leadership, after asking this question hundreds, if not thousands of times, is like DNA. We all lead differently and we're all led differently. That was the seed for the book. And so what I decided was I'm going to ask these leaders to write a chapter about leadership in their own voice. And that became Voices for Leadership. And as you know, it's grown into a monthly live call. And now we're hosting a retreat in April. It's just been a great effort. Very diverse group of people from across the world wrote for volume 1. And we're working on another group of people for volume 2. And so it's an international book. And that's how that got started. And that's the basis for the Voices for Leadership series.
So, Brian, that's kind of cool in that you mentioned how it's grown into an international, and you mentioned the retreat, and we're going to come back and chat about that more. So, Joe, share a little bit about what collaboration's meant to you, and because I know you and Brian live pretty close to one another, and you guys do a ton of collaboration with one another.
Yeah, and you know, the opportunity to I've done Live to Lead, as you mentioned, Wes, Live to Lead, leadership events, half day with leading off with John Maxwell. But I was at the front end of those series, and I was able to just come alongside Brian and give him my insights as to what worked well for me, and as he was kicking off his efforts here in Lakeland. And it was just a great opportunity to learn, not only being able to share, but to learn from Brian some things that he's going through, and how he approaches things, and we built a friendship from that point forward.
And Joe, that's so neat. I remember one time hearing John Maxwell say, so many people view the whole scenario of there's a pie, and I need to get my piece of the pie, and I don't want to necessarily share with anybody else. I need to make sure I get as much pie as I can. And John, when John was explaining that, he says, "Gosh, guys, what you don't know is there's a baker in the back making a whole bunch more pies." And the beauty is, and Cindy and I, we work together on a daily basis. When we do on site with different organizations that our clients and whatnot, we really complement each other. But we would not necessarily bring somebody else in our own space into our hometown, but that's not necessarily where that collaboration idea stops. Because, gosh, as I interact with you guys, each of you have very distinct strengths that I don't have, and I'm never going to have, and therefore I'm not even going to try. But it's a matter of how can I get really, really good by associating with other great people like you. So, and it's even more important when you're in the same area, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, one of the things that led to us, because of we recognized each other's strengths, and we really appreciated the insights, or bouncing off ideas and such from each other. We went and created a guided workshop retreat in Streamsong, the hotel not too far from each of us. And we had a great day of just growth and bringing others from across the area, other leaders across, to grow, to develop, to understand what a flourished life looks like. And there was a lot of transformation that happened. So one of the things I see is in these opportunities to collaborate is giving an environment, building an environment of growth, and building an environment where everyone contributes and walks away with even more than they contributed.
Yeah. One of the things that Cindy and I do in one of our signature courses is we talk about evaluated experience is more valuable than just experience alone. Because, gosh, in my 20 years of manufacturing, I remember a comment being made once where every day is that guy's first day. He's not really learning. So he was there for 20 years, but in that particular case, it was maybe he had 1 year of experience 20 times. So hard. But what I would go so far as to say, gosh, guys, that evaluated experience, if I don't have to have it personally, that really compounds my time. It lets me learn. And, Brian, before we hit the live button here, Brian and I were chatting about sometimes we'll, as really strong driven personalities, we'll throw money at something thinking, gosh, this is going to fix it. And maybe it doesn't. But in doing that, if I can learn from Joe's experience, if I can learn from Brian's experience, especially when they've evaluated it, gosh, it's so much more beneficial for me that I can get far better results without all the time and the heartache and the energy wasted on trying to get that experience and then evaluate it and figure out what I did wrong and how to make it better and so on. And Brian, you've done that really, really well with the podcast and then the book, but you mentioned the retreat as well. And that's really a theme. I've got the page pulled up that I'll share in just a second, but I'm looking at it and it says amplify your voice. And I know the whole theme is how do we collaborate with one another and really get those strong relationships that make us all better. Do you want to chat about some of that? I threw a bunch at you there, but you want
to yeah, definitely, Wes. And when I hear you talk about the pie, what I've had to learn to do, instead of looking at individuals as competitors, I like to look at them how they can complement me. And when Joe's having the conversation, he does the same thing I do in some arenas, but he compliments me in the fact that I know my personality type. I'm very direct, and I make shotgun decisions at times that really hurt me. And I can say, Joe, what about this? And he's analytical, and he says, well, have you thought about this? Maybe I have, maybe I haven't, but having that second set of eyes and someone to help me. And so I look today to say, okay, you may be a competitor in theory, but how can we collaborate and cooperate with each other? The number one thing that I know you have to do is you have to connect before you can collaborate. So it's very important that we find a connection point with others so we can collaborate with them. So I'll ask those that are listening and watching this later, how will you make a genuine connection with someone? Think about that. Think about how you can make a genuine connection with someone and learn to collaborate. So that's just a seed we'll plant for others today, is how can you make a genuine connection? And so that's what we've done. We realized, in fact, someone asked me about putting 40 authors in a book that do coaching and training and speaking like I do. They're like, well, isn't that kind of counterproductive? And I said, well, there's over 8 billion people in the world. I don't think I can support them all. And I'm not for everyone. When I realized on my podcast, not everybody's going to listen to my podcast. The people that I attract will listen to it, and others will actually be repelled by my style and what I do. So just recognizing I'm not for everyone, but listen here, I'm for someone. And when I learn to appreciate that, that's helped me.
Nailed it. That was outstanding. We've got kind of a set of notes that we're all working from as we're chatting with you here today. And Joe pulled in some of the things that you wrote, Brian, in a blog not so long ago that was called, and let me make sure I'm looking at it and getting it right. I'll pull it on the screen. 5 keys for successful collaboration. And you've got those 5 keys, Joe, detailed out. So do you guys want to chat through a little bit about each of those keys while we're here?
Yeah, I think, why do you collaborate? There's a reason, right? There's a reason to get together. There's some kind of goal. There's some kind of dream. Maybe it's just more of a dream at that point. There's a reason that you want to all get together. You're saying, hey, that sounds great. We should do something together. Isn't that how it goes, Brian?
100%. And I think that point is the purpose piece of the collaboration. Why are we doing this? What's our value proposition? And when I think about this book and this community, I like to tell people we help authors, coaches, trainers, and speakers grow their audience and increase their opportunities for collaboration. So that's what we're doing and what our goals are. And then for our readers, it's a chance to get bite-sized pieces from a diverse group of people with diverse thoughts on leadership. So really encouraged by everybody that has participated and going to participate. And just the community side of this has been a blast for me. It's a lot of hard work. I don't want to deny that. It's an uphill battle, but everything that is worth something is an uphill battle. So we were inspired and encouraged by the growth and what we're able to do to help people.
Yeah. Brian, you talked about bite-sized pieces just there. And I remember the first time when you and I were talking about it, you mentioned 1,000 pages or 1,000 words for the chapter that each of the contributors in volume 1 and so on. And I remember thinking, because gosh, as a student, I would have probably dropped the class over 1,000 words. At this point, I write just about every day, and I'm thinking, can I really say hello in 1,000 words? And I'm joking a little bit, but the way you structured it, it was a challenge to do it, but it was absolutely phenomenal, because I remember you saying your point was, how can you get a concise message to where it's a quick nightstand read, and now it gives the reader an opportunity to develop that relationship with you outside of the book in different channels or whatever. And it was just a cool idea. Again, you challenged me with it, but it was a really neat idea. So the purpose was strong, and that leads to the second point, which was really about recruiting. And the note that Joe's got on here says, determine what strengths that you've got, what your strengths are, and what others already on the team might contribute, and how do we recruit people to bring on that we can really have those collaborations and make it stronger. Do you guys want to touch on the recruiting idea and how it's really leading in to the retreat that's coming up on April 14th and 15th?
Go ahead, Joe. I think you wrote that piece. Let's have you do that one.
No, so one of the things, yeah, you got a purpose, right? And you got everyone, oh, I want to take this, I want to do this. Right? You might divvy up the work, but it's more about reaching that goal, right? But the thing is that you need to identify whether you got the right people in this effort. Is there somebody missing? Because if it's just me and Brian working on something, is there, between the two of us, we provide some different perspectives, but is there somebody else? Well, you look at us, we're two guys, right? there's no perspective from perhaps the other half of the world. So, we have our strengths, but there's also a different perspective that someone else might bring. So we're going to be looking to reach out and uh, when we think about the bench, great teams have great depth. John Maxwell says, right? The law of the bench. I mean, how deep is our bench, and can somebody else carry it on when we may be great, but somebody else coming in would be able to help us go further.
So
And
great you explained that, Joe, and realizing how when we come together we're so much better, and that's this whole piece around collaboration. People have been collaborating for centuries, and in days bygone, you could only collaborate with those in your local area. We have such technology at our fingertips. We can collaborate with people across the world. In this book we're talking about Australia, China, Africa, just several, Europe. Several of our authors come from overseas, and we were able to include them through Zoom calls. And just so it's at your fingertips. You have no excuse today not to find someone you can collaborate with.
yeah, Joe, you brought up a solid point. I mean, here we all said we're relatively the same age, within a couple years of one another. We're all the kind of old white guys, if you will. And the beauty is, if you go to the voicesforleadership.com page, you can scroll down, you can look at founding authors, featured authors, and see that's not it. Brian did a wonderful job and having anchors that were pretty sought after names. And it was interesting because I've got books by several of them. One of them, I realized, gosh, we had a common relationship. We had some common friends in a prior life, as I talked with our friend in Orlando, Mr. Joe, the other Joe that's in the book. And we realized, gosh, we lived in that same world, and we didn't interact one-on-one, but we had so many of the same friends through that. So it was just cool to see. But even in that recruiting, you both made a really, really good point. I've done a whole lot of staffing and hiring over the years. It's not just about filling a spot. It's about filling the spot with the right person. And Brian, you've done a really, really good job with the interviews. You've set an expectation and a standard. I know today I see it in so many organizations. Hey, check the pulse. Are they fogging the mirror? Yep, good enough. Let's put you in the role. And that can be a train wreck.
Well, Wes, I appreciate you acknowledging that. And we intentionally set out to have those featured authors, those people with huge followings, not me. These other people that have these major followings have done some amazing best-selling authors, global gurus. But we wanted them to be a diverse group of people, because here's what I know. When you see yourself in someone else, when you make that connection with others, I want young people to see someone that's been successful that looks like them, that's from where they're from, that has some of their similar backgrounds, to know that that's an example of leadership. And both of you know, we gave all of the reward, the profits from the book sales to big brothers and big sisters, because that's what we decided as a group to do. Is we're going to give this money back. Hey, 40 of us wrote the book. It's not fair for one of us to take the money. So we gave that back to big brothers and big sisters, because we want to be an example of leadership.
Outstanding.
And that actually brings up a great point, Brian. Sorry, Wes.
Right.
It was a communication. You were very instrumental in making sure that the authors are aware of what's going on. And I appreciate the notes that you send throughout the month. And, the Beyond the Book is an opportunity to get together to chat on a periodic basis. But you kept us informed. I think, one of the keys here in successful collaboration is having that plan of communication.
Yeah, amen to that. The plan part was really impressive, because it's that high D. Cindy does for me what you do, Joe, for Brian, and help him bounce the ideas. Have you thought about this? I told somebody on a call earlier this morning that I feel like I'm one of the most fortunate people in the world, as my business partner is also my wife of now 23 years, and we love it. So that's kind of cool. Not everybody can say, hey, I love working with my wife. It's fun, but she balances that out for me. Guys, as I'm looking at time, do you want to touch on a little bit about how that collaboration, how those things really lead to April 14th, 15th in St. Pete?
Joe, I'll let you go first, and then I'll kind of wrap it up for us.
Okay, great. So one of the great opportunities is authors of the book of Voices for Leadership, all collected, can come together here in St. Pete and have an opportunity to talk with each other. I mean, we rarely have the opportunity to get on and be all together at the same time. And we're dealing with our own businesses and our own lives and our speaking circuit, or whatever the connections, however best we can serve out there. And this gives us an opportunity just to come away from that and come together, because I think it's very important that we have opportunity to bounce ideas off. So there's an opportunity to connect and really see how we can support each other through this process, through this time together.
Yeah, and we launched this book project in the middle of COVID. We couldn't come together. There was no way possible for us to come together. And thankfully, hey, those restraints are gone now. We can actually come together, meet each other face to face, get a good old handshake, those things that are missing in life. But also, hey, I'm a little selfish. I want to get my book signed by all of our authors. So I'm really hopeful that many of them will show up and sign my copy of my book. I've got all of my local authors have been able to sign the book, and I'm looking forward for others to sign the book. But it's going to be an amazing time. Also, we've invited two of our very successful co-authors. The first one's Brian Covey, who has a huge following on social media. He wasn't one of the featured authors, but he surely could have been with his following. And he's going to talk to us about the importance of social media and creating a social brand. And that's going to be important. I want to hear about that. I mean, I struggle with that. That's something I can learn from. And then the next day, we're going to hear from Kelvin McCree about taking your coaching and training business and turning it into a speaking engagement that can net you 5-6 figures as you go speak on stages. And somebody that's done it. I mean, I'm not asking these people to speak on something they haven't done, haven't lived out. I can't do either one of those speeches, but Kelvin and Brian can, and they can do it with authenticity, and that's what we're looking forward to.
So, Brian, as I look at the screen, I've got the page pulled up beside me. I also see that the power of podcasting is something that's going to be there. And yourself and several of the other folks that will be involved in the retreat have put together really strong podcasts. And it's a question that so many folks in the space that especially we're looking to really grow our reach. We're looking at how do we do it? I know it's a conversation Cindy and I've had, hey, is it time? But you're going to teach people how to do it at this event. And I'll come back to you on that, so be prepared. But I'm going to say it's in beautiful St. Petersburg area, Florida. And I don't know the exact address and so on. It's all on the website. But I'm going to tell you, about 10 years ago, I'm not a beach guy. I grew up in the mountains of Virginia. And about 10 years ago, Cindy and I stumbled onto the Gulf Coast of Florida. And I was the one that kind of twisted your arm to do it in the St. Pete area. I'm not sure. But holy crap. It's one of the most amazing places in the world. For some of us that are a little bit more country, I'm going to use the words, I still have reciprocity in Florida. If you know what that means, rock on. You can like the video right here. If not, that's okay too. But it's stinking amazing. It's not the fast paced. If you go out to the water, you're chest deep and you can see your toes. The waves aren't beating you to pieces. The sand doesn't burn your feet. It's a wonderful area. So you've baked in time for folks to make it a weekend and figure out how can they really get the most out of this experience, that collaboration, but also just a wonderful area, especially if you've never been.
Well, Wes, you didn't have to twist my arm to have it an hour from my house. I mean, that didn't take much challenge. And you're talking about one of the states people covet to come to for tourism. So yeah, we definitely want people to have the opportunity to go visit the beaches, try out the restaurants and do things in the area. You come a little early. The booking for the hotel is actually a bigger window than our event. So definitely you can do that. And it's going to be a great place to inspire you to take the next step. So when we talk about the podcasting, hey, that's what brought me here. I've been doing podcasting for 3 years now. I have met some amazing people. My podcast is a Build Your Success podcast. I'd encourage anybody that's listening to this, subscribe to the podcast and hear from these amazing leaders. And I think you just got to ask, when we talk about collaborating, once you get a connection with somebody, then you got to ask them to help you. And just frankly, just ask and say, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast, or I'd love to collaborate with you on this opportunity. You're going to get a lot of no's. We know that. But you're going to get some amazing yeses when you ask enough. And that's what we've done. So the podcasting thing, as you alluded to, we've got several podcast hosts that have been doing it a long time, got a great track record. We're going to talk about the advantages of having a podcast. I get asked this all the time. Is it too late to get into podcasting? I'd say it's never too late. It's still a growing industry and it's still got a lot of presence, and you're going to get your voice out to the people that want to hear your voice. And then secondly, guesting on podcasts. I've found that to be an amazing opportunity where people get to find out about you and you get exposed to other networks outside of your own. So this podcast, and people would come just for the podcasting panel. So I'm glad you brought that up. And that's what we're going to finish the retreat out with, is the podcast panel.
Oh, and you've even got some really, really cool stuff. There's a platinum experience option, and there's some sunset stuff. And if you've never seen a Gulf Coast sunset, if you're watching this, whether you're live with us now or you're watching it later on, if you've never seen a Gulf Coast sunsets, that's something Cindy and I've done a few times, hopped on a sailboat, taken a sunset cruise. I'm not sailing it because I'm from the mountains. We don't have sailboats in the mountains, but other people do, right? So it's magical. It's one of the coolest places in the world to see a sunset. And Brian's coordinated that. He's got that as an option there with some special one-on-one and some signed copies from some of the guest speakers of their books and yada yada. It's just a cool experience that you've put together and allowed me and Joe to help you with in some capacity. So I'm just thrilled about it, and that really ties it back to the whole point of this conversation and collaboration, and how do we work together and build stronger and create better strengths, build stronger businesses for ourselves and with one another based on here's what we each bring to the table.
Well, another example of a great collaboration. It's not just myself, you and Joe. We have Stephanie Hoskins helping us on this committee. We have Enrique helping us. And then Cindy, your wife, has helped us with ideas. And again, we intentionally have diversity of thought in that group because we want to be intentional about how it's set off and what we're going to give people. We want to provide more value than we're charging for. And I believe we've done that as a group. We've really set the stage.
Brian, I would go so far as to say you provide more value than what you're charging for in just the monthly calls that you do. Just like earlier this week when you had, Larry Levine on the call, and that's the first exposure that I'd had with Larry live. And gosh, what a fantastic person!
Well, I can tell you this: there's a lot of people that pay a whole lot more to get one-on-ones with Larry, and we had him with a few of us on a call that you could ask him questions, and he was very engaging. He had all the time. I think we could have went 2 hours and Larry would have kept going. So definitely it's amazing, again, how people lean in to a collaborative effort and support a collaborative effort.
You made a comment earlier about, there's going to be a lot of no's, but you're going to be amazed at some of the folks that say yes. And one of the things I've seen over the last 25 years is some of the best people, the best leaders that I've interacted with are also the ones they've got tight schedules. But if you're willing to work within it, they're also the ones that are most likely to say yes, because they care about how do we help other people and how do we pay it forward. And
Wes,
and that's all.
before we got on this live call, I had a conversation with one of our co-authors, Glenn Gonzalez. He's the owner and CEO of Jetit. They own a fleet of jets that charter people around the world. And Glenn saying, I got to see if my schedule allows, but man, if Glenn shows up, what another person to have a great conversation with. And I was asking him, I said, well, if you show up in a jet, Glenn, we want to go out to the hangar and check it out. So just that's another amazing person, former fighter pilot. He's an African-American gentleman. So he did it in days when that wasn't, the norm as it may be today. Great guy. Hopefully he makes it, but that's the kind of people we're collaborating with. And it's all because we asked them to.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too, because my guess is he's flying into St. Pete, not Tampa, if he's doing that. And for those of you considering it, that's where I would always recommend. I mean, any chance Cindy and I get to fly into St. Pete, there's one particular airline, I won't name Allegiant out loud, but that has been just a wonderful experience, and it's very low cost too, and high value. So and they're direct into St. Pete. So there you have it, guys. Is there anything else you guys want to touch on today?
Well, it's just
that whole location piece. It's not only 10 minutes from the gate of St. Pete. It's also 20 minutes from the gate of Tampa. So some people may choose to use. So very convenient to get to from the airports. We're being intentional. We designed it to make it convenient for people to attend. You can Uber if you want to from the airport to the hotel and not have to worry about a rental car. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just think the opportunity to come together and Amy Poehler was quoted as saying, find a group of people who challenge and inspire you, spend a lot of time with them, and it will change your life. And I think, we don't know what the connection time will bring, but it's going to do something, and it's going to help lift you in some way. And I'm looking forward to it because I think there's some reason I'm being called to be there.
Yeah, amen to that. So if you're seeing this again live, the recording, whatever, you'll see I've added in the screen, but it's also in the comments in each, whether it be the YouTube broadcast, the Facebook, or the LinkedIn. There's a VFL community link. Now, this is ideally for authors who have contributed in either volume one or volume two. But guys, honestly, if there's spots left, it's open to the free market. It's open for the general public to be able to get into some of those rooms and see the value of considering something like being a collaborative author. It's been a pretty cool experience that I've gotten to do twice now. And again, Brian's put a rock star cast together with some really cool stuff over these two, I guess, a day and a half realistically, but it's a cool event.
Well, we left that half day open for people to enjoy the St. Pete area. Again, hey, this hotel we're staying at has a booking rate of $330 a night during that time frame. We're getting it for $1.99 for our retreat. So it's another value that's added because of this collaboration, because of your community. So we'd love for you to join us. It's going to be an exciting event, and it's going to prepare you as a coach, trainer, and speaker or author, or if you even have aspirations of considering to become those, you can find out from this group whether it's worth doing or not.
Yes, indeed, guys. This has been a fun half hour that we've got to share, and I'm going to call it an investment, not spending. And we're going to do it again. I think next Tuesday we've got some time blocked off that we'll be sharing again. I don't know if we've got it necessarily set up as an event. We'll talk about that once we end the feed and we're still on with one another. But gosh, look forward to having this conversation with those of you who are watching again live or later on, so we can feed into you, but also give you opportunities to understand how we can be collaborative with you. So, any closing thoughts, guys?
I think you covered it, Wes. Brian?
Thanks for both of your time and for everyone that took the time to watch this. We're grateful for you.
Well, make it a great day. We look forward to seeing each of you out there in social media land in person very soon. See you soon. God bless.